Welcome to this presentation of Preparing for Academic Writing, sponsored by the Dalian Royal School. Today's content will be presented by members of the DRS faculty. Our goal today is to support high school graduates as they prepare for their first year of college or university, when they are given an academic writing assignment. The material is divided into 6 parts. Each section will provide you with the information you need to successfully accomplish your writing assignments. In a post-secondary environment, academic expectations will change from what you have experienced in high school. It is anticipated that you'll be able to express yourself in writing and seriously engage with course content in a systematic manner. The quantity, quality, and the level of the academic requirements will be heightened. Your professors will hold you accountable to be familiar with the academic writing process, how to research, analyze, reflect, draw conclusions, and present your work in a proficient method. It is our hope that this information will assist you in your summer preparations as you head towards the beginning of your new semester. Let's begin with Section 1.
One of the most important aspects of academic writing is planning and structuring. Now, depending on your end goal, how you put together your essay speaks volumes in making sure that your points are valid, logical, and understood. I am going to go through some basic tips as well as some advanced steps for you to follow when structuring your essay, with a strong focus on scientific essays. But remember, these steps can be applied in all formats of academic writing. Before we begin, we need to consider something. What does it take to turn our idea into an essay? We need to ask ourselves, what is the most important characteristic of effective academic writing? The idea needs to persuade the reader, but in order to do this in a professional manner, correct planning and structured format must be followed. Academic writing is not just one skill, it is a collection of skills. Critical thinking, being able to assess your ideas, pre-writing, planning your draft copy, writing, actually now putting your ideas into an essay format, revising, going over your work with a fine-tooth comb and editing where necessary, using evidence. You cannot simply state something because you think it is correct. Researching is key, and having evidence to prove your theories and statements is crucial. Using formal language, correct grammar, tense, and style is a must when writing. All academic writing starts with pre-writing, and pre-writing uses 4 different techniques. Reading and taking notes. This is the research phase where you educate yourself and take information from texts to support your essay. Brainstorming, collecting your ideas and creating a chain to help grow your essay. Creating a skeleton outline. Planning and putting the focus key points of your essay together before getting into the body of your information. And one technique to follow when writing paragraphs is the pie outline. Point, illustration, and explanation. I will talk more about these topics as we continue. Writing is a process that is taught and practiced with a teacher. Working with your teachers is fundamental to your success. An example in the PPT now is one of these processes where a student should be taught individual skills, the writer should practice, the instructor or teacher should give feedback, the writer practices the skill in a context, such as an essay. The instructor or teacher gives feedback again, and then the writer is able to do it on their own. This cycle is a continuous circle and requires a lot of practice. In great academic writing, the writer's ideas are all clearly connected. As illustrated in the PPT here now, idea 1 should follow to idea 2 and therefore follow to idea 3. It is important to make sure that your ideas complement and connect to each other, all with the same end goal in mind. Writing clearly. Making clear connections between the ideas in our writing is important because we want the reader to be able to focus on the ideas without getting distracted or confused. In order to create clear connections in our writing, it is important to, number 1, write with a clear purpose in mind. Number 2, plan before writing. And number 3, identify and follow patterns used by good writers. It is very important to do your research. Identifying the purpose for writing. When we write academically, we must have a clear and constant purpose. This cannot change and must be shown throughout our workings. Understanding the purpose of why we are writing is extremely important. The purpose helps the writer decide what vocabulary, grammar, and organization to use in a piece of writing. It is fundamental that the format is professional and has one easy-to-follow tone. An important aspect in our purpose is description. Being able to create a picture in our readers' minds is very important. The best way we can do this is through the use of description. The writer must be precise and be able to use their words to design a crystal clear image of what they are trying to say. As we can see in the example on the PPT here, in the description of Chicago. Explaining a process. Description is the base work for the writer. Next is to make sure, especially when writing a scientific essay, that the writer must be able to explain the process. This must be a step-by-step and follow the exact order that was used in the experiment or findings. As we can see illustrated in my example of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Persuasion. Writing academically is often written in a persuasive format, with the goal in mind to make the reader support your ideologies and findings. An important fact to remember, without evidence, this will be impossible. Make sure to state all supportive workings. Getting ideas before writing. The purpose of a question. An academic writing assignment starts with a question. This question usually has special requirements. By analyzing the question, we should be able to identify the purpose of the writing. An important tip to remember is, make sure you read the question carefully and have a clear understanding. You must be certain of what is being asked of you before you can begin planning and writing. Brainstorming. I spoke about this before, but an important aspect to remember is brainstorming does not mean you must do this alone. Sitting with your teachers or classmates is a great way to collect a variety of ideas and topics to help you create the perfect essay. Planning before writing. Now, I had touched on the point of making a skeleton outline, but to give you a little bit more information is, a skeleton outline is a general plan for a piece of writing. It contains only the most important points of the essay. It is like the skeleton of the essay. It provides the structure needed to build the rest of your essay, to build the body of your information. In a persuasive essay, the skeleton outline will consist of 2 parts. Part 1, a sentence that tells the writer's opinion about the topic, your ideology. Part 2, a sentence for each reason, including pros and cons, that the writer will use to support his or her opinion. This is your evidence. A well-known tip is to focus on your paragraphs. While it is good to focus on having students write good, clear sentences, I prefer to focus on paragraphs because focusing on sentences often results in too much of a focus on grammar. Students often demonstrate understanding of organizational strategies quicker than grammar. A well-organized paragraph can still be understood by the reader, even if the sentence-level grammar is not mistake-free. And after the paragraph is written, you can then revise and look for any grammatical errors and fix them. As the old saying goes, it's as easy as pie. We can also write good paragraphs using the pie format. P stands for point. The first sentence, this is the main idea of the paragraph. It is the one of the supporting reasons from the skeleton outline. I stands for illustration. The second sentence, this is an example that supports the point. And E, explanation, the final sentence or sentences, this is where the writer tries to make a connection between the illustration and the point. Here is an example of a paragraph using the pie structure. P, the point, your reason 1 from the skeleton outline. I, the illustration, your sentence number 2, an example of the first sentence. And sentence number 3, E, the explanation, makes a connection between sentences 1 and 2. Here is a summary of some of the takeaway points that you could use in order to make sure you are writing in a clear and easy to understand format. Now that we have gone over good methods for writing general academic essays, I will now go through what would be needed to be done when it comes to writing a scientific essay. Again, these practices can be adopted in all styles of academic writing. Here, as we can see in the PPT, are some of the basics on how to write a scientific report. This is a good example of the skeleton outline we have spoke about before. When it comes to a scientific essay, this layout, or skeleton outline, should be followed. The title, the aim or abstract, the introduction, the method, the hypothesis, the results, the conclusion, evaluation, and reference. The first point of the skeleton outline, or layout, is the title of your science report. And as illustrated in the 2 points here are the aspects you should follow when writing your title. Aim or abstract. The aim section should describe what the purpose of the scientific experiment is in no more than 2 or 3 sentences. The abstract, which is your summary of your entire working, including the results and conclusion. In academic publications, the abstract is useful as it allows others to quickly judge if your work is relevant and of interest to them and warrant more detailed reading. It provides a similar role to the summarized content you find on the back of the cover of a book. Background and introduction. As I've already stated the importance of doing research when it comes to academic writing, in this section, it is important for us to show our clear understanding of any background information that we have found whilst researching the topic. Method. In this section, it is important to list the equipment used. When writing your method, make sure to write in the past tense and avoid using personal pronouns. Your method must be detailed enough for others to follow and repeat your work if required, but should not be written in a style as if it was a series of instructions for others. Scientific hypothesis. One of the most important parts of a scientific essay is, of course, proving or disproving the hypothesis set forward. Following these steps is vital to make sure your scientific essay is academically sound. Science experiment results. One of the key points of your essay will be showing and proving your results. Following the steps shown in the PPT here will ensure that your reader can see your results clearly and be able to understand them. Here are the 3 steps to finish the conclusion portion of your scientific essay. Number 1, Restate the overall purpose of the experiment. Number 2, what were the major findings? And number 3, was the hypothesis supported by the data? Evaluation. You should include here sources of error that might affect the results. An important tip to remember in your evaluation is to always suggest improvements. Remember, there's always room to grow and always room to improve. Reference. This is a vital part of your writing as it holds the weight to back up your findings and allow others to check your research.
For further information on these topics and related content, please refer to the following resources and references.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Reading Critically for Research. In this section we are going to be talking about identifying reliable sources as well as how to read actively instead of passively. Finally, we're going to talk about how to organize that information into proper notes and note-taking techniques. So before you start gathering information for your research, it's really important to look at what you're going to read. So finding a reliable source. So we can do a few things to find out if the source is reliable or not, such as look at who the author is, when the material was published, what the purpose of the reading is, as well as how is it supported, and also who is the audience. So is it for an academic audience, or is it maybe a little more casual? So, what sources are considered reliable? Typically, you're going to want materials that are published within the last 10 years, as well as research articles written by respected and well-known authors. So you want someone writing the article who knows what they're talking about, and that's very important and fairly easy to recognize when it's not. Also, try to steer away from websites that end in .com, .ca, or .org. You're going to want to find things published by educational institutions or government websites. So things that end in .edu or .ac are really good examples of where you can find some good, reliable information. Also check out some academic databases. So places like Google Scholars or JSTOR are incredible and have lots of academic peer-reviewed journals to go from. So what sources should you avoid? It's very difficult now that we have the internet. It's such a great way to get information, but some of the information we get from the internet is not very reliable because anyone can post them. And some of the information is very out of date. So again, try to find information and articles that have been posted within the last 10 years, specifically if it's for science. Posts from social networks are not very reliable, and research articles that do not have citations, again, you do not know where that information is coming from, so try to avoid them. Now, let's talk a little bit about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not a reliable source. However, it is good if you want to know a little bit more information before finding the specifics. Do not quote Wikipedia or trust it at face value, but if you find some references at the end of the page, go to those references, and there you might be able to find more reliable academic research. So now you have found all the information you want to use. Hopefully you're very interested in it. Let's talk more about active reading strategies that can help you to understand the text and remember and retain as much information as you can. So we're going to look at SQ3R, which means survey, question, read, recite, and recall. Before you dive in and read your materials, make sure you survey the text. Now what that means is Review the table of contents in the first page of the book so you know what you're going to be looking at, you know the chapters you need to pay attention to, and all of the key objectives within that chapter. Pay close attention to titles or outlines in the text, as well as anything that pops off the page, such as charts or graphics within the book as well. Just like as if you were in class and your teacher questions you through your lesson, it's important to do that for yourself as you're reading. This can help you to retain more information, as well as test your own understanding of new concepts and theories throughout your reading. It helps you to critically engage with the text and really find it fun instead of boring and kind of passively reading through the words without understanding. Ask yourself what you're searching for in your readings. Ask yourself if you understand the words that are coming off the page, and do you need to learn more about it? Now let's move into the 3 R's of your new active reading technique. So the first R stands for read, and when I mean read actively. So use sticky notes and highlighters, circle key ideas, or draw diagrams as you're going along to make sure you are really engaging with the information. Recall what you read by summarizing chapters and sections in your own words without looking at the text or notes. This can really help you solidify the new information you are learning. And review, the last R. After you recall, that's great, but you need to make sure you keep reviewing this information. The more you review, the more you're going to remember. So review immediately after finishing a section or a chapter, and then periodically through the week or months, keep going back to those chapters and looking through your notes so that you don't forget what you've learned. Now, to actively read and really understand new information, it's important to record yourself. So record the information you're coming across as you go so that you can get the most out of your text. And there's many ways to do it, and there's not just one way. So find whatever way or what combination of ways work best for you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these methods later on. But first, we're going to talk about just some initial note-taking ideas and helpful hints. So when you're taking some initial notes from your readings, there's a couple of tools you can use. The first one, a great one, is highlighters. But sometimes when we highlight, we get a little bit carried away. So if you look at these 2 pictures, the picture on the right, you'll notice that everything is highlighted. In a chapter, it's important to find the key bits of information that can help you. Another hint to help you to succeed is, if you notice the picture on the left, there's different colors. So find the key bits of information, and then also you can use different colors to help you organize that information for later note-taking. Post-it notes are also really great for your initial note-taking, especially if the book that you are using is not yours. It's a great way to mark a book without damaging it, as well as you can use many different colors to subsection your books or articles you are using. You can take notes on the post-its as well to organize information from the page in your own thoughts, and later you can take the post-it notes from the book and create some kind of study wall or mind map to help you organize this information to use for your essays or for review. These are a few helpful hints to organize your initial notes for review or for writing an essay. So you're very familiar with the Cornell method, which is what you use in school. This can be very good for lectures, but also good to organize information for yourself to use later. Flowcharts, if you look on the right, can be very good for helping you to organize writing as well as to understand processes. Mind mapping is a wonderful tool to use. Not necessarily for as you're reading, but mind mapping can be a great way to review your chapters and also to create a study wall. Techniquing like this helps you to see the big picture of what you're studying and helps you to organize your own thoughts. Outlining, however, on the right is perfect for textbook readings. It's very organized. You can see your titles and your subtitles or subheadings, and then later on you can highlight information from your own notes, things that are really important that you really need to remember. I really hope what we've talked about in this section can help you to improve your reading for research, as well as enjoy what you're reading and find new ways to learn. Please remember that there is no one way or correct way of doing things, so try to use different methods and see what works best for you. Also, incorporate videos or other sources into your reading to really help you grasp your subjects that you're learning about. You're also not on your own, so you can join a study group or talk to your friends about your new material. Once you can teach what you've learned, you know what you're talking about, and other people can question you to help improve your learning as well. If you have no one to talk to, you can use your pets or even just talk to yourself out loud so that you know the information, and it helps you to feel a little bit more comfortable with what you're learning, and it can help you to really enjoy. Good luck!
For further information on these topics and related content, please refer to the following resources and references. In this section, we will look at critical writing and arguments with DRS, ESL, and ELA teacher Peter Waldvogel. For many of you, the idea of critical writing may be a new one. So first of all, we need to answer the simple question, what is critical writing? Critical writing isn't just about attacking or criticizing others or their ideas. It evaluates evidence and arguments. It reaches conclusions based on that evidence and those arguments. And in order to be convincing, it should make use of multiple sources. To put it simply, critical writing analyzes sources, evaluates their validity, and then reaches a conclusion. One of the most important aspects of critical writing is learning how to use arguments, learning what they are, how to make them, and why we need them. So why do we need arguments? They make our essays more convincing and persuasive. The key is persuasion. In an essay, you can't make a strong thesis statement or express any new views without backing them up with good arguments and evidence. So how do we make arguments? In this PowerPoint presentation, we will consider several ways. We can provide evidence, we can do our best to be persuasive, we can create logical arguments, and we can challenge problematic reasoning in opposing views. Of course, one of the most important aspects of your essay is the evidence that you provide to back up your claims. If you can prove your point, your essay will be much more persuasive. Depending upon your topic, you can use a variety of different kinds of evidence, including statistical data, testimonial evidence, anecdotes, and even analogical evidence when there isn't much information available. Perhaps the most important aspect of any argument is whether or not it is logical. Now, not all arguments are based on logic. In fact, many are not logical. Many are logical fallacies. However, the strongest arguments are logical ones. So, as you build your arguments, do your best to be logical, to produce logical reasoning that supports your point of view. There are essentially two forms of logical reasoning. They are deductive and inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning starts from general principles and moves to specific conclusions. Inductive reasoning starts from specific examples and moves towards general principles and conclusions that are probably true. In other words, a deductive argument is one in which true premises guarantee a true conclusion. It is impossible for the conclusion to be false if the premises are true. For example, China has the largest population of any country in the world. I live in China. Therefore, I live in the most populous nation on the earth. If these premises are true, it's impossible for my argument to be false. In an inductive argument, premises offer strong support for a conclusion. If the premises are true, then the argument is probably true. For example, I live in China, and I love many things about this country. I love its culture, and food culture is part of Chinese culture. So it is likely that I enjoy eating Chinese food. Although both forms of argument have their strengths, it is clear that a deductive argument is stronger and more convincing than an inductive one, simply because it must be true. There are many different types of arguments, some logical and some illogical. Here we will look at a few more examples. However, it's important to note that some of these arguments are also logical fallacies. This means that they are not strong deductive arguments, but rely on something other than logic to be convincing. For this reason, they should be used with caution. An ethical argument involves morality, whether a position is right or wrong. Ethical and moral arguments are not logical, but they can be very convincing depending upon your topic. For example, in an essay on climate change, you might argue that driving an environmentally friendly electric car is more ethical than driving a vehicle that pollutes the environment with fossil fuels. You might say that we have a responsibility as citizens of the earth to care for the natural world and to preserve it for our children's children. It's just the right thing to do. If you're writing about social issues, ethical arguments can be very useful. Another form of persuasion that can be used to address a wide variety of issues is an emotional argument. For example, if you are writing about economics, it might be useful to discuss the suffering of the poor, so as to elicit sympathy in your readers. Describing the horrible conditions that they live in and the terrible challenges that they face may cause your reader to feel sorry for them. And once this emotion has been introduced, your proposals for solutions to the problem of poverty may become more convincing. Although logical arguments can be made regarding economics and poverty, emotional impact is often more convincing to readers. Bandwagon appeal has to do with the feeling that everyone else is doing it. It is, in essence, an attempt to use peer pressure to persuade. This is clearly a logical fallacy. However, peer pressure can be very powerful. If you cite statistics which show that most people support your point of view, your readers may, in some cases, be more susceptible to persuasion. For example, if you are writing an essay about social media, you might say that 90% of people under the age of 40 use some form of social media. and that its popularity indicates its value to society. Many people say we shouldn't overuse social media, but clearly, nearly everyone disagrees. By demonstrating that most people enjoy the use of social media, that most people are on this bandwagon, you are giving your reader pressure to agree with their point of view. A similar yet different argument is called plain folks appeal. In Western countries, this is often used in political debates. For example, one party may make the argument that it is the party of the common people. With plain folks appeal, being ordinary or common is a good thing. It's a virtue. Being special or different is a bad thing. It's viewed in a negative light. For example, in the USA or in the UK, one political party might claim to represent ordinary citizens better than any other party. They might say that other political parties only represent the interests of the wealthy, or perhaps those living in urban areas, while they ignore the common people, the plain folks. Another very common argument that is often used to support a variety of different positions is the appeal to authority. This argument posits that the opinion of experts is more valid and holds more weight than that of ordinary people like you. Instead of addressing the facts and figures relating to an issue or argument, all one needs to do is quote someone who has the position or reputation to make their points more valid. For example, arguments about global warming rarely address the actual science of climate change. Instead, writers and commentators will often say something like, the overwhelming majority of scientists agree that man-made global warming is real. While this, again, is a logical fallacy, it is a commonly used strategy in persuasive writing. Another useful tool when making an argument is so-called loaded language. This is the use of strong language that supports your opinion. It really is as simple as choosing the right vocabulary to give your argument more punch. For example, if you were making an argument about the need to help the poor, you might want to say, poor people have difficult lives. If you used loaded language, you might change this sentence to make it more compelling and persuasive. You could say, the destitute among us struggle from day to day just to survive. Another important tool for creating convincing arguments is the use of counterarguments. This involves addressing opposing views that challenge your perspective. If you can handle the arguments against your position in your own essay, you may be able to make it much more convincing. One way to do this is to challenge your own arguments. You can first turn against your own position, questioning its validity or some apparent weak point in your argument. This should be followed up with a turn back to support your position, showing why it is in fact valid in spite of the challenges you have raised. Another way to do this is to raise the arguments of those who oppose your position, particularly well-known or commonly referenced arguments that are raised when discussing the issue you are writing about. For example, if you are asked to write a persuasive essay on the issue of capital punishment, the death penalty, and you oppose it, one important point to consider might be justice for victims and their families. Those who support the death penalty may feel strongly that a primary motivation for the use of capital punishment is the ethical argument that those who commit terrible crimes must be punished for the sake of justice. if you can address this issue and demonstrate that justice can be served without allowing the state to kill criminals, your argument may be stronger. Lastly, one very common strategy in debate and persuasive writing is the use of straw men. While this technique can be somewhat dishonest, if properly applied, it can be very convincing. The straw man is an argument that is similar to, but not the same as a position you want to oppose. It's easier to challenge and defeat. For example, those who support the death penalty might say they want justice. However, those who oppose the death penalty might claim that its supporters are really just seeking revenge, not justice. They might write the following sentence: victims and their families are often understandably enraged by the injustice they have experienced and want to see criminals suffer for putting them through such terrible misery. In this way, they are completely reframing the argument and, in a sense, misrepresenting it, or at least reinterpreting it. After all, it may be hard to argue against justice, but it's much easier to argue against revenge, which is considered immoral in many cultures. Critical writing, argumentation, and logic are very large topics. In order to fully appreciate and understand them, they require further study. Here are a few references to help you get better acquainted with these topics.
In this section, we will have a look at the academic writing style. Some of the points we will cover are the academic writing standard, which includes more information on the types of language that we will use. Secondly, at humanities versus sciences, because these are two very different fields, so the writing style may be different in each. And lastly, some sentences, phrases, and academic vocabulary we can use in our writing. Let's look at some useful tips and strategies for a successful academic writing piece. An easy way to remember some of these strategies is to think of the word topic. T-O-P-I-C. In this section, we will briefly discuss how this can help to improve our writing. So when planning your academic writing, keep in mind that you should write full words, keep your content objective, be precise, impersonal, and be cautious with your use of language. Now we will have a look at some examples of each point. T, the full word. You should try to avoid using contractions. Instead of writing it's, use the full words it is. O, objective. Your writing should be kept objective. This means you need to present your information in a neutral way and use facts. P for precise. It is important to be specific and write in details. Your writing should never be vague or left open to one's own interpretation. In other words, it should not be ambiguous. Now, what is the meaning of the word ambiguous? This means that the word or the sentence that you use is open to more than one interpretation, or that it has a double meaning. So we should always try to avoid being ambiguous. I for impersonal. Using the second or the third person when writing helps to keep your writing piece more formal. Avoid adding personal experiences or stories. So I hope you guys can remember the second and third person. So instead of using words such as I or we or us, Rather, try and write your sentences using he or she or it, or even they or them. And lastly, we have C for cautious. Use careful language when you are writing. Some ideas or conclusions may not be facts. It cannot be proven, so be careful when you are writing about this. Try using words such as could, appear, seems, implies, or suggests. And here we have some additional tips for you to keep in mind when you are planning your academic writing. Always remember to use formal language when you are writing. So this means instead of using words such as get or totally, replace it with words such as obtain or completely. Another important thing to remember is never use slang. Next up we have try to avoid repetition. This means using the same word over and over again in your sentence or even in the same paragraph. And it is not necessary to use long words or sentences that are too complicated. If you are not 100% certain of the meaning of the word, try and avoid using that word, because you should be confident when you are writing, and therefore you need to make sure that everything you write makes sense. Now, next up we have adding tables, graphs, and images. In your academic writing, it is often necessary to include some visuals to support your writing or to illustrate some facts. Now, some things that you should keep in mind when you want to use these visuals. Always provide numbered captions with a clear descriptive title. This means you should give your graph or your image or the table you are using a name. Now we will further discuss this about how you should name these. Next we have when referring to visuals in the content that you are writing, use the caption number and discuss its content. Always remember to label all the units, the X and the Y axis, the columns, the parts of the diagram, etc. Then we have provide the source of the visual image. You should always remember to mention where you found this image and ensure that all images are clear. This means it shouldn't be a blurry image. As previously mentioned, when you are referring to these visuals, always state the caption number of the image or the graph. Now, if we look at the top right-hand corner, table 1, that is our numbered caption, and just underneath, regression model with IP scores as the criterion variable. This is our clear descriptive title. And just underneath we have the source. So example, in our writing we would say, as shown in table 3 or as illustrated in figure 2. Why do we say this? Remember, when citing a table or a figure in your writing, refer to it by its number, such as table 3 or figure 2. Do not refer to it by the position of that on the page, for example, the figure below, or using the page number, example, the table on page 12. The next part in this section is humanities versus sciences. Some things that we should keep in mind. Who is the audience, and what is the purpose of our writing? Here we will have a look at the different writing styles we use in different courses, because as you know, different courses have different writing styles. So what is the difference between humanities and sciences? Here I've given you some examples of courses in sciences, which include microbiology, medicine, physics, astronomy, and so forth. And some examples of courses in the humanities are languages, history, art, law, politics, and education. The number one thing we should remember: when writing in the humanities, we need to follow a critical and analytical approach. And when writing in the sciences, we should follow a scientific approach. So what is the main difference? For humanities, we need to analyze, interpret, argue, and explain our thoughts. And for sciences, we should focus on informing the reader using facts and solid data. Now for the next part in this section, we will talk more about sentences, phrases, and words. Always remember that your sentences should be grammatically complete, and it should also be free from any spelling errors. Your writing should consist of clearly written paragraphs, but you will learn more about this in one of the other sections. Always remember to use clear links between sentences to ensure coherency. Now, what kind of links should we use? We can use the link words such as and, but, so, while, whereas, or although, which are all conjunctions. So we use these conjunctions to join ideas as clauses in one sentence. Or we can use the linking words such as however, on the other hand, therefore, and furthermore. These linking words we use to link ideas in two sentences. Another important thing to keep in mind is most of the information in our sentences is put in noun groups before or after the verb. So at the right-hand corner you will see, there I've given you an example. Each procedure has been tested by a team of international experts. Next up we should always remember to use topic sentences for each paragraph. On the following slide, you will find an example of this. And normally academic sentences don't include many clauses. This is because you should keep your sentences short and to the point. If a sentence is longer than 3 lines, it is probably too long. Here I have included some examples of certain words or phrases we can use. When we want to introduce something, we can say, this essay discusses, or is explored, or is defined. To conclude, in summary, to review, or in conclusion, and if we want to compare things in the same way or likewise. And I also have a couple of other examples, such as when we want to use things that are adding, we can say and, as well as, moreover. Sequencing, first, second, thirdly. Illustrating, for example, such as. Qualifying, we can say words such as but, however, although. Contrasting, whereas, alternatively, unlike. Cause and effect, because of, as a result of, consequently. Summary, in short, on the whole, in other words, or emphasizing, above all, in particular, or especially. In the last part of this section, we will be talking about academic vocabulary. When we are using academic vocabulary instead of English vocabulary, This does not mean that it is difficult vocabulary. We should just focus more on using appropriate language that is suitable for your topic. And also keep in mind the technical terms or words that you might want to include in your writing depending on your field of study. I have included an example, a little extraction there, that we can use an academic word list. This you can find online. And now in conclusion, just some additional helpful tips. Always use a dictionary when you are unsure of some words. Do not just assume. Use the word in the correct part of speech, so you should know if this word is a noun form, and a verb form, or an adjective. Try avoid using boring words. Avoid using the same word twice in one sentence or close together in a paragraph. And remember that although a word might have more than one synonym, it does not mean you can just choose any one you like. Make sure it fits in your sentence and what you are trying to say.
For further information on these topics and related content, please refer to the following resources and references.
Hello and welcome to the unit on editing and proofreading. This is an incredibly important part of your writing process, and you must ensure you leave enough time to do this. The objective is to convert the first draft of your writing to a final version that is as error-free as possible. This unit will cover three main sections. First, you'll be introduced to the differences between drafting, editing, and proofreading. Second, we'll go over the 2 steps involved in the editing process. And finally, we'll provide some tips on how exactly to proofread your writing. So what is the difference between drafting, editing, and proofreading? Each of these are stages in a process which develops and produces the final assignment. If any of these stages are not done or not done well enough, this will be reflected in the quality of your assignment. Now let's look at the main differences between them. The 4 stages of this process are as follows: drafting, editing, redrafting, and proofreading. In the following slides, we'll go into them in a bit more detail. Drafting simply means writing a first version of your assignment. It's important to remember that before you start writing, you need to have a plan and structure in place. Try to avoid simply starting writing without knowing how or what you're going to write about. After writing your first draft, the next step is editing or revising. Put simply, this means looking at your assignment and changing parts of it in order that your reader can clearly understand your argument and the points you're making. So you're going to look at what exactly your written work says and what order it's in. We're going to look more deeply at this editing process later in this unit. Our third stage is called redrafting, or simply writing your second or even third draft. Once you've edited your work, there should be significant improvements in content. Now, it's important to know that it's not necessary to completely rewrite the whole paper. Rather, you just need to rewrite the areas that you identified for change. The final stage in the process is proofreading. The purpose of proofreading is as follows. First, you are ensuring there are no mistakes in your use of grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Next, you must ensure your writing is in an appropriate academic formal style. Finally, the presentation of your work must be checked. Again, we will look deeper into these things later in this unit. So, once again, the 4 stages of the whole process are drafting, editing, redrafting, and proofreading. Now let's look more deeply into the editing process. So, you've written the first draft of your assignment. Now it's ready to be edited. Editing is a long process and something which needs to be done multiple times as you continuously redraft your assignment. Editing is related to revising the substance of the writing. In other words, what it says and what order it's in, so the reader can understand your argument or assessment of the question. Let's look at the two main steps. Step 1 is commonly known as surface editing. This means simply looking at your assignment and identifying areas you had issues writing. It's recommended that you read your assignment out loud, or even get a friend to read it out loud while you listen. This should help you identify areas that are not clear or areas that you had difficulty articulating in the written word. These areas need to be highlighted, and you should make notes about what exactly you wish to change. Step 2 is called deep editing. This means looking in detail at the logical structure of your essay, the relevance of your arguments, as well as the evidence used. So how can you do this? Let's take a look. First, you need to look at the introduction of your assignment. Ask yourself the following questions. First, do you have a clear, relevant opening sentence or sentences? Second, have you stated your thesis, also known as your central idea, explicitly in the introduction? And finally, does your introduction outline the main points of your assignment as well as guide the reader as to the structure of the paper? If the answer to any of these questions is no, you need to edit the introduction. Your introduction not only outlines the structure of all points in your assignment, but also that you've interpreted the question or task correctly. Next, look at the main body of your assignment and ask yourself these questions. Does the main body of your text have a logical sequence? Does each paragraph have a main idea, also known as a topic sentence? Are all of the other sentences in this paragraph linked to that? Do your headings and subheadings sum up the meaning of the text that follows, and vice versa? Do you guide readers by making links between the different sections? And finally, is your evidence provided relevant to the points being made? Is it accurate, and is it specific? This will show that you understand the subject and can use evidence appropriately. It also shows readers what is meant, rather than just telling them. Again, if the answer to any of these questions is no, you need to change your writing accordingly. Next, look at your conclusion and ask yourself these questions. Does your conclusion restate and summarize the main points made? And does your conclusion serve as a culmination point of your argument, giving a sense of completion? You want to leave your reader with a strong argument. Finally, you need to look at miscellaneous or random things. First, have you acknowledged all sources used? If you have not, this means you are plagiarizing. Next, do all references cited in the text appear in your reference list? Anything cited in your text needs to be in the list. Next, have you used language clearly and economically? Does every single word contribute directly to the meaning you're trying to convey? And finally, is your writing written in appropriate academic style? These areas need to be double and triple checked as they can be easily overlooked. The final point I'd like to make on this topic of editing is that you need to remember there can be multiple edits and redrafts. This is by no means something that you do just once. Next, let's look in more detail at the final stage of the overall process, proofreading. This stage comes after you have completely finished editing the content of your assignment. So you might have done multiple redrafts and changed a lot. Once you're confident that your content is ready, now it's time to proofread. It's a good idea to take a break between writing and proofreading, even if it's just for 20 minutes. You should also proofread at the time of day when you know you can concentrate best. By doing this, you'll be able to look in detail and not miss anything. It's also a good idea to ask a friend to proofread for you. Proofreading means looking for errors in these 4 areas: grammar and vocabulary, punctuation, spelling, and presentation. Let's look a bit more deeply at these now. For the area of grammar and vocabulary, you need to ensure the grammatical structures you're using are accurate. Look out for basic errors such as incorrect tense, wrong prepositions, and incorrect past simple and past participle verb forms. For example, in my experience, students can produce fantastic writing, but then there will be an error such as he think that instead of he thinks that. This is a very minor error, but it massively decreases the quality of the assignment. Next, look at your vocabulary. Is it academic? If you're unsure, you could use an academic dictionary or a self-study book, such as Academic English in Use. There are even websites that can help you, such as thesaurus.com or synonym.com. Finally, is your writing style formal? So this means avoid writing in an informal way. No slang and no contractions. You want to be using grammatical structures such as the passive voice. The next area to consider is your use of punctuation. This is important because a misplaced comma can change the emphasis or even meaning of a sentence. The list on the screen is by no means exhaustive or complete, but these are basic things that can easily be used incorrectly, especially in areas of your writing like direct quotation of cited material. Look carefully and analyze every single punctuation mark you use. Spelling is another area that can really decrease the quality of your writing if you have incorrect words. Look carefully and even get a friend to look for errors. And remember, while it's true that Microsoft Word can identify spelling errors, it cannot tell you if you are using the correct there, there, their, they', or two and two, to, two. Therefore, try not to rely too much on technology. Instead, go through carefully, and anything that you think is not correct or might not be correct, just double check. Finally, you need to look at the presentation of your work. Your university may give you guidelines on how to present your work. Follow these strictly. If not, then ensure your presentation is consistent with font style and size, spacing of your words and between lines, margins either side and above and below your writing, page numbering, a title page if it's required, as well as your reference list. And with your reference list, ensure you're following the correct format as specified by your university, whether it's APA or MLA. Thank you for listening in this unit. Here are some references for further reading on the topic of editing and proofreading. I highly recommend you access these books through your university's library or by other means and use them to ensure that you are being the best editor and proofreader that you can be.
Hi everyone, this is Megan. The following part, we're gonna talk about citations, referencing, and plagiarism. In order to fulfill the goal you'll be given in your essay, you will need to read books and articles to show that your knowledge of your subject is developing. When you found a useful source, you will need to read it very closely. Reflect on what you read and take notes. Your notes should include quotations, summaries, and paraphrases of the content. However, you must make sure that you reference other people's words correctly. There are reasons for doing this. For example, you'll need to acknowledge the intellectual property rights of earlier authors, to show respect to and for previous scholars, and so on. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is the unattributed use of someone else's ideas and work, such as the incorporation of facts, ideas, or language without proper acknowledgement of the source. And it is considered to be cheating or plagiarism if you pass off other people's ideas or words as your own. If you're not sure how serious the charge of plagiarism is, then look it up in your department or university handbook or check the website. Let's take Yale University as an example. Yale, like other educational institutions in the United States, has a strict zero tolerance policy for infractions in the Academic Honesty Code. Cheating or plagiarism of any sort is never tolerated. The penalties of academic dishonesty include reprimand, restriction, probation, suspension, expulsion, fines, and rustication. This is another example of Harvard Extension School. Many universities in the UK and elsewhere are starting to use sophisticated software to identify when someone else's words have been copied into an essay. Turnitin is an example. Turnitin UK is an online service which searches the World Wide Web and extensive databases of reference material, as well as content previously submitted by other users. Turnitin makes no decisions about whether a student has plagiarized. It simply highlights sections of text which are duplicated in other sources. Now let's have a look at three key terms referring to referencing and citation. The first one is quotation. Quotation requires you to reproduce entire text along with quotation marks. On the other hand, you are at liberty to paraphrase the text in your own words, and there is no need to make use of quotation marks. The second one is citation. Citation is how you quote the source of the ideas within the body of the research paper. It is included at the places wherever you quote from different authors. And the last one is reference. It's the list of sources given at the end of the work. The information of all the works indicated in citations is given in the reference list. A good start point is to make sure that when you are making notes from books or articles, you note down the source, author, book, and page number. You can also consider citation software such as EndNote. It can generate citations and references automatically. There are two ways of incorporating other people's ideas. The first one is direct quotation. A direct quotation is when you are directly quoting what someone said, word for word, not paraphrasing. You put direct quotations in quotation marks. Avoid direct quotes because these are rarely essential in academic work. An indirect quotation is when you are reporting what someone said, but not exactly. You're paraphrasing, which means express the meaning of the writer or speaker using different words, and you don't need to put indirect quotations in quotation marks. How to paraphrase a quote? If the original sentence is, "A thesis statement is a necessary first step in the preparation of an essay." First of all, we can replace the key vocabulary with synonyms. So this can be changed into, "A statement of your argument is a crucial preliminary element in the preparation of an essay." Secondly, we can alter word classes. So the sentence can be changed into, "Stating your argument is a crucial preliminary element in preparing an essay." Finally, we can also alter the order of words, phrases, or clauses. So the sentence could be, "A crucial preliminary element in preparing an essay is stating your argument." And we can also use the reporting verbs to help us paraphrase a quote. For example, we can use Megan suggests that, Megan states that, Megan asserts that, Megan implies that. What can help you avoid plagiarism? The answer is write in your own words. It is obvious that you must read and understand work before using it. Try to paraphrase and summarize the work, and do not leave assessments to the last minute. Time pressure could be the main causes of plagiarism. Try to plan your time effectively, especially if you have a number of assignments due together. Here are several situations when you are expected to use citations, no matter you have paraphrased, summarized, or directly quoted the original author's work. There are several referencing styles or conventions. Different academic subjects use different referencing systems, so make sure you know which one is used for each course you take. You should be able to find this information in your course handbook. Referencing styles do differ from university to university. Here, let's use APA as an example. Let's see how to write an in-text citation by using APA style. In-text citations are citations within the main body of the text and refer to a direct quote or paraphrase. They correspond to a reference in the main reference list. These citations include the surname of the author and the date of publication only. The citation must follow the quote directly and contain a page number after the date for the direct quote, while the page number is not needed for parenthetical ones. Let's see several examples for a reference list. The first one is how to write an entry for a book. Write an entry for an edited book. Write an entry for an academic journal. Write an entry for a website. If you're not sure how to write a reference list, just ask for help. You can try the following exercise if you like. The answers will be given on the next slide. Okay, everyone, here are the answers. Don't use essay writing service because buying an essay or part of an essay is academic misconduct.
For further information on these topics and related content, please refer to the following resources and references. Here is our academic writing team, responsible for the preparation of this presentation. We all wish you great success in your academic future.
It is our hope that the information provided here will be of benefit to your studies. We encourage you to refer back to any section for further review. Thank you for viewing this presentation.